Greetings, mind crafters, and welcome to another Minecraft discussion on this beautiful day. The wind is blowing and it's sunny and it's just so great here in northern Vermont. My name is Kimberly Quinn, and it is my pleasure to be here with you on this gift of a day. And what I'd like to talk with you about today is to be kind of live in the world and not of it, right? So my inspiration today is Sarah von Brednick, author of Simple Abundance. It's a day book for comfort and joy, which you know I love, and I've gotten back into it in my 50s. Before that, it was my 30s when I read this book. And Sarah talks about the world is too much with us. So this gentleman named William Hazlitt starts out by saying, what I mean by living to oneself is living in the world as in it, not of it. And so I think this is super important, especially now. It's interesting because she wrote this book ages ago, literally decades ago. I don't even know if cell phones were around, if they were around. They certainly weren't like they are now. And if computers probably, well, maybe not, I don't know, were around, they wouldn't be like now. And so in this fast-paced, media-saturated society we're living in, I think this is super timely, possibly even more timely than when Sarah first wrote this. And so she begins by saying, the world is too much with us. Poet William Wordsworth complained over 200 years ago. Even more telling, right? Because that's obviously 2 centuries ago, is way different. And she writes, getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Sorry, that's William Wordsworth. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. And then Sarah says, too many women, I'm just going to change that to brackets with people, too many people would agree with him. We're chronically exhausted from the getting. The amount of energy spent earning a living and juggling the demands of home and career. And the reality of the recession means we're paying now for the spending of yesterday. This is also kind of wild because most people, I think, would agree. Definitely my mastermind club. I'm part of a group of masterminds, and they're just the most amazing people. Very bright, and also very funny. And I mean, they're just super well-read and knowledgeable of, how the economy works. And they've been talking about this recession coming for a while now, and so this is super timely. So so she says, and the reality of the recession means we're paying now for the spending of yesterday. And this is an easy one to jump into here because I think that there is most definitely a disease of wanting in our society, and definitely in the United States. I love my country very much. I think it's just true that the more faster paced societies are not the collectivist cultures, where we tend to be more kind of independently thinking, and in the business world, have our eyes focused on off in the next move. I'm not saying that any of that's bad or anything, for sure. Kind of motivated to climb the ladder often, and it's just different. And then there's the sort of, constant, as in 24/7, especially with cell phones now and computers, of all the pop-ups and everything you can possibly have and everywhere you can possibly go. And it really yanks us out of the moment, no question, just yanks us out of the moment. But also with the disease of wanting, there's this social comparison thing that happens with social media. So I think that in addition to the media saturation with all the pop-ups and looking at the endless sea of everything we can have, we also see what other people have, which didn't used to be the case. I'm a fabulous 58, and that didn't used to be the case. Like when, a family had something, they got a new lawnmower, they got a new station wagon or whatever. Once it went in the garage, you forgot about the lawnmower and the station wagon. You know, now with all, you know, all the technology, you know, 24/7, who's in a relationship, who's at the party, who got married, who graduated, who had a baby, who's traveling and seeing all kinds of cool things on the other side of the world or whatever. And that's directly attached to also spending, obviously, for a lot of reasons. So then Sarah continues and says, but despite all the doom and gloom that constantly assaults our senses, there's a way for us to ransom our lives and reclaim our futures. It consists in turning away from the world to recognize what in life makes us truly happy. Now, you know I'm all about this. You know, I've done a whole bunch of things fairly recently on simple pleasures, and since the world has gotten so much faster, with so much more exposure, I mean, gosh, I feel for the teenagers and young adults now. It's not even safe to make a mistake anymore. You know, back in the day, you know, you could be in 8th grade and be, you know, we used to play those games, Post Office and Spin the Bottle and all that. It was so innocent. And let's say in high school, God forbid you make out with somebody that, you know, wasn't considered to be, you know, whatever, if that person wasn't considered to be in the in crowd or whatever, all the teenage stuff. You know, there's no denying it now. You know, you can't just, you know, do a little touchy-feely thing behind the garage without everybody knowing because of the cell phones. I think that just makes it really tough. And then back to the simple pleasures, the world's gotten so much busier that, sadly, I think a lot of that's, you know, gotten lost. Because, you know, and the technology has a lot to do with that too, just pulling us away from the moment. It's also, kids don't play as long as they used to. That's not just my opinion. That's researched fact. You know, back in the day, a 12 or 13-year-old was way younger. I don't mean it intellectually speaking, but as far as play goes, we still played at those ages. And, you know, the persona you were in school didn't have to be the one at home if you don't live in like right now we live in a very small town, so that's pretty much the same. But when I grew up as a kid, you know, the kids you saw in middle school all day long most likely were not in your neighborhood. So you could go home and play and just have fun, and that's all different now too. So it's just for each of us, what that is will be different. What makes us truly happy, right, will be different. You know, oh my gosh, back in the day, what made us happy was riding bikes. Sometimes we do no hands, and we did all kinds of tricks. You're in the woods making forts and stuff. Now, what makes a lot of kids happy right now is playing mindless video games on their phone. That kind of saddens me. Not that that's everybody. I'm not saying that, but things have changed. I think we can all agree. And that statistic I gave, no, I didn't give it to you because I forget what it is. That was a long time ago. I forget if it's much past the age of 8 anymore, 8 or 9. I did a seminar on this sort of kind of topic years ago, so that would even be more so now. I think it was like 9 back then, so it's probably less. It's like Toys R Us and that are putting out the numbers because people don't, if I recall that was right, the kids just don't play as long as we did, and largely because of technology. Anyway, so for each of us, what makes us happy, right, will be different. But once we obtain this inner knowledge, we will possess the ability to transform our outer world. You can live a lifetime and at the end of it know more about other people than you know about yourself. The pilot and writer Beryl Markham reminds us. Okay, let's just say that one again from Beryl Markham. You can live a lifetime and at the end of it know more about other people than you know about yourself. We cannot let this continue to occur. That's such a good point. Think how many, this is so long ago this book was written, and these quotes, and it's so true. And you know, the young adults today, you know, we know that this is, as far as the young adults go, the most anxious and depressed generation the United States has ever seen. And they do, I think that their sense of self, which is already a tough stage anyway, because they're learning about themselves, right? And I think it's just gotten so much more with all the distractions, and again, in the social comparison we just talked about, you put all that together, and that they're not living in the moment. Because if you're missing out on your life minutes, right, you're missing out on your life. And only what we pay attention to, only what we focus on, because where we focus on, that's where our energy goes, right? So only where all that's happening, where our attention goes, is what is making it to long-term memory. So these kids these days, when they're, you know, staring at that little mini screen, or at the big screen, realizing that none of that, is they're just missing out on life. It just saddens me to no end. So I think we'll keep moving. Today, deliberately turn away from the world. I mean, this has killed me. She's not even talking about technology because I don't think much of it was around then. And it was still crazy. Now it's just so much more so. Today, deliberately turn away from the world. Don't read the newspapers or watch the nightly news for a week. Longer if you can stand it. So again, think of how much more of an issue this is now. She's talking about, Walter Cronkite, probably, who actually gave the news, too. It wasn't just opinion. And, the newspaper, for the most part, even back then, was mostly negative stuff. And sometimes no, because sometimes maybe the Boy Scouts are doing something cool for the town, or if it's on the national level, that's a whole different deal. But it might be like the marathon coverage or something like that. But nowadays, if you go on the internet, you can, there's so much just negative stuff happening. It doesn't mean to stick your head in the ground like an ostrich and not pay attention, but it does mean to go on a news fast, I think, as much as you can, and certainly before you go to sleep, because we certainly don't need that in the, heading into the unconscious mind before we drift off into a blissful, or what might be not a blissful slumber. That's just not good for the brain. And you want to be kind to the mind. So don't read the newspaper or watch the nightly news for a week. Longer if you can stand it. Shun the glossy magazines featuring expensive suits designed for success. Wow. When I was first deciding to do this podcast, I didn't even read down this far, because again, I've read this whole book a million times. And just, the irony here is that this was so long ago, before any of the bling bling, and still the social comparison. That's what she's talking about. Instead of all the pop-ups on the computer, it was glossy magazines back then, which a lot of times when I talk about this with my students, I think we also forget, even as seasoned adults, and especially during the holidays, we don't realize that we're looking at, the airbrushed, ideal Thanksgiving dinner where everybody's looking happy rather than maybe trying to kill each other. Or Aunt Tessie, who brings that same horrible, French bean salad every single year that no one eats, and we're all pretending to, moving the beans around as much as possible. And they're not talking about the real, and people don't realize it takes a whole team of, marketing type people, cognitive psychologist type people that have those skill bases that are making that, in other words, there's a whole staff making that one glossy page, looking like that's what everybody's doing. So it pulls you in, and then we measure ourselves up, and it just affects us on the inside. What's the matter with me? And especially when it's at the holidays, not only is, why don't I have that? It's also, people are reminded of their loneliness around the holidays, because they're seeing all these, because family is marketed, basically. Family is marketed. And then starts, people really start with the not enough thinking, right? Because, how come I'm not at that stage? How come I don't have a nice dining room table like that? How come I don't have a house yet? How come I don't have a party yet? How come I don't have a family yet? Or if you're younger, how come my family's not like that? I'm not at this stage, or maybe you're close to retirement age, and how come, I'm not able to host these big things for my big family now? It just goes on and on and on. So Sarah says, wean yourself away. Oh, this is great advice. Wean yourself away from the opinions of others, however talented, creative, and celebrated they may be, as you continue to journey within. So this is what we're talking about, the social comparison. We know that that's all over social media, but we don't even need to compare to family. We're all individuals. We are not, you're not your mother, you're not your father, you're not even a blend of both of them. You're your own person. Yes, genetics play a role, but as far as your mind, you're an independent thinker, at least if you choose to be, and you don't have to take on any of those, sort of agreements, as Don Miguel Ruiz would say, that you made early on, when you were younger. You can reinvent yourself at any time. And then Sarah says, absorb the shock of becoming aware that many of your preferences and opinions are not truly your own. Right? We just talked about it. And that's not to say the parents and auntie this and uncle that are evil demons. No, they're doing what they knew too. So it's just kind of generational agreement making. Oftentimes, the big topics are politics or religion and views about this and views about that, but it can be views about anything. We don't Just because we've been programmed doesn't mean we can't reprogram. Very important to get. And then Sarah says, begin instead to listen. Begin instead to listen for the whisper of your authentic self telling you which way to go. We're always being shown the next step of our uniquely personal journey. It may be as simple as clearing up your desk that you can find that adult extension course brochure with the watercolor classes. Oh, I like that. Do your own thing. She's talking about just checking out of the world. You know, we're not saying completely lose touch with reality because people would be concerned. However, we can absolutely create our own reality. Absolutely create our own reality. And that's what she's talking about, is following. I had a little throat tickle there. Following our own authentic path, finding our own meaning, our own purpose, and doing what makes your heart sing. So she says, only when the clamor of the outside world is silenced will you be able to hear the deeper vibration. Listen carefully. Spirit's playing your song. This is Kimberly Quinn signing off from the beautiful northern Vermont. Have a mindful day.